but it's decaf. Oh, it's the cold open. I'm coming into the cold open. I've been listening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live show. I've been listening to this ridiculous podcast that I wouldn't recommend to everyone. It features three comedians that are really, really well trained in improv, which I'm discovering my preference tends to be people that are gifted in improv on podcasts rather than stand-up comedians. But anyhow, John Gabris is one of them. For those of you who know John Gabris, he's like this fat, bearded, hilarious dude who's kind of a bro. And his two friends are also bros. And what they do is they watch all of the old action movies that I grew up and they grew up. They're about the same age as me, in their 40s now, that we grew up watching, and just talk about how awesome, but also how terrible they are. And at the start of every podcast, they just do a cold open where they're doing something stupid, talking about something random. And what I notice is, for the first three podcasts, I almost switched it off because I was like, what the hell are these guys talking about? And then they would dive into the actual episode and I'd be like, oh, sweet. They're talking about Under Siege starring Steven Seagal. This is going to be amazing. Or they're talking about Bloodsport starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, one of my faves. That's also one of the few things I have in common with Donald Trump, is that we both love the movie Bloodsport. Anyhow, here I am doing a cold open. And what do I know about a cold open is it makes people want to switch off rather than listen through. So I don't know. I think this is a bad influence on me, but I have fun and I'm enjoying myself. So that counts for something. We've got a cool guest today, America. I'm excited to bring her on in a bit. But first, I'll share in terms of my life and what's been going on. Most recently, well, we're on our way off to Costa Rica for a week. We leave this evening. We've got someone hanging out in a house while we're gone, keeping an eye on things. But we go away for a week to sit with ayahuasca, to sit in ceremony, and then we have the month of June off. And when I talk about a month off, people often say like, that sounds awesome. That must be amazing. And it totally is. And it's super important. We've just wrapped this year's Forge and I am tired. I can feel like myself energetically depleted. And I felt that over the last week. Like I've sort of woken up and I've looked at my calendars. And I'm like, oh brother, what do I have to do? Who do I have to talk to? Who's someone that needs my time right now or wants some of it? Or whereas when I'm feeling more resourced, I look to it more like, oh, cool. Who's someone that I get to have a conversation with, and who's someone that I get maybe the opportunity to serve today or something along those lines. So, so the break is really important. And when I work with leaders, this is one of the things we put a lot of attention on, because as leaders, when they work with me, one of the things we're supporting them to do is to have a greater and greater impact in the world. And that impact happens a whole bunch of ways. The first sort of shift is they move away from having an impact solely by virtue of what they're doing. So it's not, like if you imagine Barack Obama or Donald Trump or whoever, Joe Biden, Justin Trudeau, trying to have more impact by like doing more, talking to more people, that's not going to work. It's not going to scale. It's going to be hampered and bottlenecked by their capacity. So when we work with these leaders, we're developing their ability to have an impact based on who they're being, and sort of like the way they show up in a given space impacts people. And then those people show up differently around the people they're with. So you get kind of this cool trickle down effect. It's exponential. And so what happens as they do this work and they deepen into transformational work is that their impact becomes magnified just by virtue of the way they show up into a room. That room shifts to a greater extent than it was before. And of course, all of us have this capacity to some extent, but as you deepen in this work, you become more and more of a transmitter. Your energy matters. People notice you more. They start to take note of the things you say. And consequently, your being has a bigger and bigger impact. How you're showing up has a greater effect on the people around you, the world around you. The clearing that you are is bigger. And so that's awesome, except the flip side is, if you're not resourced, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're not getting your own needs met, if you're not keeping on top of your well-being, that also has a greater impact. So when I show up in my life angry or grumpy or whatever, that lands more on people. So the more we work with leaders to do this, the more important it is that they start to discover for themselves what really resources me, what do I need to have my cup feel filled. And that's a lot of the work too. And so that's what, like, taking a month off sounds really sexy, but it's actually quite challenging. It requires a lot of it requires I intentionally set aside stuff and be intentional about taking that time off, and intentional about being unintentional, by which I mean sometimes I have to really like, oh, what I want to do is nothing for a week. I want to play video games for a week, but then I need to set in place a little bit like, okay, great, I'm going to check back in with myself in a week, because otherwise I start to like just get on this downward slide. And before I know it, I've spent a month in my underwear, not showering, playing video games. There's an image for you. and then I don't feel any more resourced. That first week might have been good, but then it just becomes a cascade and I start to feel like horrible about myself. So there's a lot of, it's not just a fuck off for a month kind of thing. It's really like there's always the practice of leadership, even when we're like, even about not being a leader, we're kind of practicing responsibility, being at choice, being intentional about these sort of things. So that's what's up. That's where we're at. I'm a little bit tired. I can feel that weariness. I'm going to rely on America to prop me up throughout this whole conversation. But it's actually been kind of nice because it was my birthday on Monday, 44, double digits, I guess, of the same digit. So I had my birthday on Monday, which I took off. I'm very proud of myself for like booking that off. And then the Tuesday, my assistant had incorrectly put the stat holiday in on Tuesday instead of Monday where it was meant to be. So I had that booked off too. I didn't book any calls there. So coming into this last week has been very, it's been a nice sort of like a downshift. You know, I've kind of not had as many calls. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday has been a little bit quieter. I don't have too much to do today. And then we're off on a plane. So it's been a nice transition. And the last thing I want to say before we bring America on is, I try to structure more and more my weekdays this way too, because what I've noticed is typically, well, all of us know that experience on Sunday where we're kind of dreading. It's Sunday, it's like, it's fine at about noon, but then around 3 p.m. and then around 5 p.m., it's like, oh man, this is even worse than a Monday evening because I've got nothing but the whole week in front of me. And as I started to sit with that, I was like, that's weird. I want to create an empowered relationship to every day of the week. I don't want my life to be awesome 6 out of 7 days of the week. I want it 7 days out of the week. And so I started to look at what would make this feel better. And part of it was that I would leave Sunday and get up Monday right into a whole pile of work. And it was very daunting and very jarring. It was like a shock to my system. And so these days I try to create a Monday that doesn't have too much scheduled in it. And I try to create a Friday that doesn't have too much scheduled in it, so that the flow of my week is kind of like a wave, you know, so I can come up into it, be really productive Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then kind of smooth back down. And then the weekends can be for housework or whatever they happen to be, relaxing, spending time with friends, and then back up. So I try to model that in my life, in my weekly life, in my monthly life, all of that sort of stuff. Okay, enough about me. I'm going to tell you briefly about America, then we'll bring her on. America and I got connected initially through one of the former leaders of the Forge, one of the founders of the leadership team on the Forge, Sarah Gibbons. And America's actually on her way to go visit Sarah. Sarah's uprooted her whole family and moved them to Costa Rica for 6 months, maybe a year, as kind of like the thing she wanted to do, an experiment she wanted to run, where she was like, I want to live somewhere else. We want to do this. And so I think they rented their home, moved everything to Costa Rica. The kids are going to school there. They're living their life there. And then I think they head back at the end of that time. So there's some cool stories about America and I's initial conversations. I want to bring her on to talk about those, and then we'll talk about more stuff. So America, put on your camera, put on your mic, do all the stuff. Hello.
Hi.
I like the halo. of light that you've got behind you. It's a very well positioned light.
Unintentional, but I'll take
Yeah,
it.
but hey, you know, when spirit wants something to happen.
It happens, right?
So how did we, do you remember how we connected initially? Like what did we just start talking on Facebook, or what was the initial
Well,
connection?
Sarah had mentioned you because she was in the program for a couple of years, and so I would watch you on these lives, and just listen, and she would often, invite me to the program,
The
and
forge you're talking about, right?
yes, that the
Yeah, yeah,
forge, right.
yeah.
Um, and so I finally decided that, okay, I'm interested,
Yeah,
and so then I reached out and you and I had a conversation, and I don't know if you remember that conversation that we had or anything about it, but
I do, but I want to hear you describe it.
yeah, well, it's a little vague for me, but I remember I talked to you and I was a little nervous because I have this thing about if I'm going to get on the phone with someone, I don't want to waste their time. So if I'm not serious about something, I won't get on the phone. Like I'm not,
Right.
you know, and so, but I also in the back of my mind, I was like, but I don't want to say yes to something simply because I feel obligated. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and you were really good about that. I wanted information on logistics. I'm very much like, okay, what time? What are we going to talk about? What are we going to cover? Like I want to know what am I getting for the investment? And you were a little vague about it. You,
Yes.
I don't know if you just didn't know. I mean, you knew the big brushstrokes, but I don't know if you knew the details that I was asking.
Yeah.
And I think when you were talking to me, you were kind of more investigating, like it wasn't even this straightforward, but it was more like, what would have me ask that question,
Right.
Yeah, and which was annoying because I just wanted to know.
Yes.
But I mean, this was all very subtle, I was like, okay, like just tell me what I need to know, and
Yes.
yeah. So anyway, so that happened, and then I remember at the end, and it was Sarah who actually told me to call you. But at the end, I remember
The end
that,
of that first call, right?
yeah,
Yes.
when we got off the phone or we were getting off the phone, I told you I wanted to do this program or the Forge. And you were,
Accomplishment coaching or the forge, right?
what's that?
Accomplishment coaching was the other one you were considering,
Accomplishment
right?
coaching
Yeah.
or the Forge. And you were explaining to me both because you had done accomplishment coaching, and after speaking with you, I was like super committed in my head that I wanted A, B, C. So
Yes.
and you said you actually made an offer that was a pretty good offer, like if I was willing to throw down. And I think you thought that I was going to be a person that, because I said I'm going to do AC first,
Yeah.
right? Accomplishment coaching first, and then I'll come back. And it sounded to me like you didn't believe me. It sounded to
Uh-huh.
me, I don't know if it's true or not, but it sounded to me like maybe you thought, and it could have turned out that way because anything can happen in a year. But I think you thought that I was just talking, that I wasn't going to circle back. And you
Yeah.
made me an offer to kind of like, like almost like calling my bluff. And I was in my mind like, no, I'm going to do AC. And I mean, I didn't say this to you, but I'm like, I'm going to do AC,
Uh-huh.
and then I'm going to do this. And then I remember well, anyway, so we got off the phone, but it's the
Well,
way
can
that,
I interject a little bit here? Like, I just
sure.
want to share some of the, so yeah, I remember like, well, I remember a couple things. Like one, you'd asked about, what do you think I should do? And I always a little dangerous, right? Because it's like one person kind of telling the other person what they think they should do. But I remember speaking to how, from what you'd shared with me, it seemed like you already had a lot of training under your belt, and um, so you asked, what do I think I should do? And I was like, well, if you're looking for more training, then accomplishment coaching, but I don't think that's necessarily the way. And I think this is the point in the conversation where I got a little attached. Given that you were asking me what I thought you should do, this is what I think you should do. All right, we've said that point. And then you were like, through no fault of your own, well, no fault of anyone, but like, okay, I think what I'm going to do is accomplishment coaching. And I think that was kind of triggering for me. My attachment got like caught in that. And so, yeah, we got off the phone and then continue.
Yeah. Well, there was a couple of things there. Number one, I did ask you that. And part of me just wanted to hear your take and your whys behind it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah. And also looking back, it's a way that I test people
Mm,
because I know that like there's an interest in it for me to join the Forge, right? Because it
sure,
is a
yeah, like a
program, right?
bias.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see how much integrity, and I've got a pretty good sense for BS and for people and when they're doing the right thing. And I genuinely wanted to hear what you had to say, but it was also part the way I test people. Like, do I want to do business with this guy? Is this guy full of it? Is he just another one of those, where he's selling from the stage, like,
Yes.
you understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I said, let me see how he's going to handle this, I mean, and, you also believe in the product that that you put out there, and you know what I mean? And you're a business person.
Yes.
So I got that, but I just wanted to see how you were going to handle it. Right. And you actually, what you said was actually true. I just had no way of knowing, you were accurate in what the advice that you gave me, or not advice, but
My take kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. But I get positional, I dig my heels in, and like I have an idea in my head, and that's what I'm going to do. And it takes an act of God to sway me, right?
Yeah.
And so I wasn't worried about it. I knew that I would come back and do it, because you had been endorsed by Sarah, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And she had been in it a couple of years. Anyway, but when we got off the line, when we were coming off, I didn't know that you were attached or whatever, but to me, it occurred as you were kind of dismissive, like, oh, you're not going to do business with me then. And you got off the phone kind of abruptly. And I was kind of left like, because I kind of opened up to you and I told you where I had been stuck for many years and And then for that to happen, I just expected a little bit more graciousness. And then I just left it alone. I said, whatever,
Let me speak to that part too. Like that, I felt that too, getting off that phone. I was like, maybe annoyed. I don't know. And what was going on was my attachment again. And it's such a great example of how we have to let people have their process. And your process was to go and like ask that question, get the answer you got, and then go down the path of accomplishment. There's nothing I could do. Oh, I mean, I could have probably tried to browbeat you into it, but it wasn't going to make a difference anyhow. And even if you did choose from that place, you're choosing from a place of being browbeaten into it. That's not going to really, there's no breakthrough down that path. So yeah, like I remember getting off that phone too and being like a little like, why did she even ask? Just angry, annoyed, triggered, basically. Yeah. So you got off the phone. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't say anything, and I wasn't going to say anything to Sarah because she had obviously recommended, and I didn't want her to feel bad or whatever.
Yeah. But, this guy you recommend is a dickhead.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
And then, but I had the maturity to hold it, but it was like, I wasn't expecting that. Anyway, so I talked to her, and a couple of weeks went by and I talked to her and I said, well, we were just sitting around. I wasn't going to say anything, and then it came up and she said, oh no, you got to talk to him. You got to call him back. And I'm like, I'm not calling that perpetrator and talking to him. Forget it. I'm done with him. And she says, no, you don't understand. He's really committed to this work. And if he did that, he will clean it up. He's safe. You can call him. Because sometimes when you call people and you give people feedback, you'll get attacked again. And I'm just not
totally.
I'm not up for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want more of the same.
I'm doing you a favor, giving you this feedback, and then you're hammering me like, okay, bye.
Yeah. She goes, no. He takes this work very serious. He's very committed to his growth. He will own it. He will clean that up, and he's safe. You don't have to worry about him coming at you or putting it on, like he'll own it.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, I didn't want to. She goes, no, you need to call him. So she didn't force me, but she just was like, that's
standing.
Yeah,
good stand.
Yeah. So then I did, and I didn't expect much. I didn't expect for you to, and no, you cleaned it up. You owned it. You didn't try to pretend that what happened didn't happen. I don't know what happened or why it happened. I just know I sensed something like, did I imagine that? And no, you were very good about it. And I was like, okay. Now, even with that response, I probably would have still came back and did the Forge because I was committed to that. I wasn't going to allow that to get in the way, but it just had left a bad taste in my mouth because I felt I felt like I had opened up and been vulnerable. And then you kind of were,
well, fuck you.
Yeah, like a little bit like that. And then, so I was like, ooh, okay, so I just have to like,
Yeah.
just around him, when I'm around him, I just got to close a little bit. You know what I mean? I can't
Yes.
be so
Got to be a bit
open.
protected
Yeah, yeah, a little
because
bit
I know
because
how it goes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because he can be a little prickly, you know?
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, none of that, none. So I'm so glad that she told me to call and encouraged me. I'm so glad that you responded the way it did, because then it just dissipated and went away. It was like nothing, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't weird because had we not done that, even if I had gone into the forge, that would have always been in my space and I wouldn't have said anything, but that's who you would have been for me. Like
Totally.
he's like, he can be a jerk, so be careful with him. Don't
Yeah.
trust him, you know?
Which is such a great model for how we like, well, there's a few things I want to say. Like, first, I want to just thank you again for like having the courage to reach out and give me the gift of that, because that allowed me to like, I was holding that on myself, and I took it to my coach and got supported and did like my work, but then there was still like something between you and I for me to clean up. So like, it was a real gift for us to get to be in that conversation. Two, what you just described, like how it would have gone, is such a excellent description of how relationship tends to go for us, where we're like, things are awesome, finally this person is cool. Oh fuck, they're only half cool or whatever. Okay, forever forth, they're cool, but I'm always going to be a little bit guarded. And then that stuff just piles up over time until eventually we just can't be with each other anymore. And third, like, what happened, I assert, is what's available in relationship when we're engaging in our work, is that we don't have to get like, it's not wrong that any of that happened. That's just two humans being human with each other. Humans get attached to stuff no matter how Buddha like we want to be. And the answer or the solution is not to never get attached and never do anything wrong. It's rather to like be willing to clean it up. And if we can do that, then we can just like, cool, we can be humans, we can make a mess, we can clean it up, and then we can start to trust ourselves. We don't have to hold ourselves in check constantly.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, when that happened, that whole thing, and then, and then it passed and it was okay, but it got etched in my brain of what is possible
Mm,
when I have a little bit of faith and a little bit of courage. And you could have turned around and been aggressive with me, or, reject me, or you could have done that. And, but you didn't. And so that got modeled for me, like, oh, it is possible to go back and mention, in a way that, obviously that can be heard. If I'm coming at you like this,
yeah.
that might, the message may get lost, so it's also in who I'm being about it, as I'm
Yes.
coming back around. But it's possible that you might not be in a place where, or have the capacity to be with the feedback, right?
Yeah.
But you were, and it was success. I would say it was incredibly successful, and it wasn't intentional. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal, but I just thought, like, this is what it could look like.
Mm-hmm.
So, really, I'm not kidding when I say this. I can then now channel that, like, when I'm being you, and I can also recreate it when I'm being me again. And if it
Yes.
doesn't go well, it it's okay, because I know that it is possible. It's just not every time it's going to be a success,
Totally.
obviously you've got training and I've got training. And so this is the ideal situation, but I've dealt with people who have a lot of training in this ontological space, and they get triggered. They, like, that's all your identity. That's all
Yes.
you're dealing with. So
It
anyway,
becomes a weapon that or like you're always presented with a mirror, and you never see responsibility modeled. You're always invited to be responsible yourself. And you're like,
yes,
I need you
yes.
to show me what it looks like first.
Yes. And I also got to see that opportunity, that, like, what I do is I just usually walk away and I'm like, like, I got what I need. So, like, F
Yeah.
you, like,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's kind of how it goes. If somebody crosses me, I won't be rude to them. I won't, I'll try a little bit, but okay, fine. You're not
Yeah.
up for it. No problem. And then I'll leave. And that is part of my leadership, of going just a little further,
Yeah.
my capacity to, like, ask for what I need, or give feedback, or just try to clean up my side of the street and not be attached to what Adam or anybody else is gonna, you know what I mean? Like, all of that
Yes.
was so beautiful. So actually, now I'm glad that we're even talking about it, because I hadn't distinguished it quite that way. It was it had landed, but not in the way that I'm explaining it. So thank you.
Thank you. It reminds me of what you were describing, the typical way it might go was like similar for me. And I can remember when I was about 20 working at McDonald's in the maybe we'll call it like the colorfulness of the relationships you create when you're 20. Because when you're 20, like you're just meeting people constantly. That's how it feels. You're going to bars, just in all these relationships. And like my way of dealing with relationship was just to cut people's heads off. And what I mean by that is we're friends, we're tight, we're doing stuff. You cross me, fuck you, you're dead to me. And like I remember this point where some guy said something that got back to me that was like probably super minor, but I was quite fragile. Like the way I'd become was fragile with like an impenetrable wall in front of me so that my fragility couldn't be attacked. And he said something that like got in and hurt me. And I remember just being at McDonald's and him being like, hey man, I just really want to apologize for it. And I was just like stony face, like, you know what, let's not even talk about it. And him being like, well, I just really want you to know. I'd be like, you know what, I just don't even want to talk about it. And like, there was nothing he could do to get in. I just doubled down on that wall. And that was like my path through life and through relationships for so long, which was cut off people. And it was a great way to kind of like ensure I didn't get hurt, because you got to hurt me a little bit once and then you were dead. But it was also like my relationships were becoming less and less and less, because no one can get through this walls and walls of ice that were being built up. It's very effective, but super lonely. Yeah. So if you're willing, like, would you share about that intervening year? So you went, well, actually, maybe like, what was your training? I know you've done like training as a coach, as a leader. Like, what was your training prior to this? And then how was that year of training with accomplishment coaching for you?
I would say that, I mean, well, I've done a whole bunch of stuff. It's embarrassing how much stuff I've done. But mostly I want to say that the like I would consider my background to be in spiritual psychology, with the University of Santa Monica. That's where I met Sarah.
Yeah.
And that was phenomenal training, right? And then did some intensive, quite a stretch in NLP and hypnosis. And I know a lot of people, have this thing.
Are you doing some right now? Is this some NLP?
Yeah, that's right. I'm NLPing you right now. No, but I know people have like this reaction to NLP. Like I think it's fabulous. I think NLP is at the foundation of everything every day, and people just don't know it. So it's, but anyway, so I loved that training, and it's one piece of the training. And then, of course, there was some Enneagram stuff, and then there's, but what else? There was some other stuff that I did. Oh yeah, ontological work, just
like Landmark.
With Landmark, just like pretty steeped in that for years and years and years, And I mean, I would say those are the big ones. There's been a lot of other,
So you didn't come into this work a neophyte by any stretch of the imagination. You have like, I mean, Heather and Sarah both, hey Heather, hey Sarah, it's great to see you both. Heather says, you go girl. And Sarah's saying you truly are a life learner. I love that about you. And really you're kind of exemplifying that, like clearly there's been a commitment on your part to like, we could call it mastery, or learning these arts of like development and supporting and serving.
Yeah.
So you have all that under your belt. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So then, I heard you talk about accomplishment coaching. And so I
Big
said,
stand
okay,
for their work.
I'll do that,
Yeah.
And so I did that for a year.
And how was that year, given all of the training you had?
I came from Landmark, so I expected more rigor. More rigor, and
you're expecting karate chops in the head all the time.
And I particularly, I was doing, they no longer offer it, but I was doing the Introduction Leaders Program for a couple of years. So that's like the Navy SEAL of, that's their crown jewel, they call it, right?
Yes.
They give a lot, but they ask a lot. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's just leadership. If you can't take the heat, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
kind of thing, right? And so anything next to that occurs to me as like marshmallows,
Which is hilarious because when most people go to accomplishment coaching, they're like, whoa, my God, this is like a pressure cooker. Holy mackerel.
Oh
And
no.
you coming like, this is
I,
marshmallows. This is
I'm
hilarious.
like, they need more rigor. We need this thing to be more tight,
Kick this
But
guy in
anyway,
the head over here.
yeah. And I remember when I first got there, they're like, you're kind of intense. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, you're kind of soft. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, but it was fine once I relaxed, or maybe they just stopped telling me. Maybe they just gave up and stopped. They stopped with the you're intense. And I hate to be told I'm intense, because
Uh-huh.
I just think I'm super passionate, But anyway,
Can I ask you a
um,
question about that?
mhm.
What is it about intensity that you don't like being told you are? There's probably a more elegant way I can word that, but do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I make it like, well, I think, that what it does is when people are saying you're intense, it's like my slip is showing, you know what I mean? Because that means I'm not normal like the rest
Mm.
of the world, you know what I mean? And so that,
Intensity is bad.
yeah, and I'm going to
Yeah.
be not loved. People are not going to want to hang around with me. I'm different. Which feeds into my, like, just my fear of I'm different, I'm weird, I'm like, strange.
Misfit.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so then it feeds into that, and I'm like, I'm different. That means I'm going to be left. I'm going to be abandoned. So I don't want
Right.
to be different.
Got it. Okay, so you're getting that. They start to stop. You
Yeah.
probably start to mellow a bit, I'm guessing.
Yeah, well, number one, I laid off the coffee because if I'm intense, I don't need coffee, and I really don't. I drink decaf. But they were pointing to something, because there is like when I'm in a new environment and I don't know what's going on, there's a part of me that gets frightened. It doesn't register as fear, but I
Of
get
course.
like hyper, like I need to know, I need
Uh-huh.
to know where are all the exits, who's in charge,
Yes.
like that. Metaphorically, I get that way. And I think what they were pointing to is that I saw the bigger picture is that it was a new environment. I wanted to do well because I'm the one that sits with the little apple in front of my computer for the teacher, and I want to get it right because if I get anything wrong, I won't be loved, that, I mean, none of that is conscious, but I've worked that out where I can get that way. And so when they were saying you're intense, I'm like, fuck, I've been working on that to hide that for
Uh-huh.
years. And they just pointed at it
Yeah.
and that,
Fuck, I didn't get it.
yeah, like I'm doing it wrong, like I'm not
Yes.
hiding it well enough. Anyway, so I had a year to kind of, for me, that was a year just to kind of take a look at and soften a little bit more,
Mm. Yeah.
just soften a little bit, relax a little bit. And and then also playing nice in the sandbox with others. I've always had it that I'm like a bull in a china shop. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's how I feel. And so whenever I'm around others like that, and especially if they're a little too soft,
Yeah.
I'm just like, I it's a kind of like not wanting to hold a baby because you're afraid you're gonna, drop its head or
Yeah, I
something.
know
That's
that
how
one.
I feel around other people. And so a group of people. When I'm one-on-one, I'm great. I'm funny. I'm warm. I'm like I'm great. But when I'm in a group of people, I kind of like do this I take myself out. Even I
Right.
could be in the center and I will wind up on the outskirts, and I do it to myself because like the stuff that runs in my head. So so they started chipping away at it, and then when I got to the forge, there was some more of that came off. You know what I
Right. So
mean?
they'd kind of like push down some of that grass into that field. Like that
Yes,
path was a little bit
yes,
open. You had,
yes,
yeah, gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah. So David Hong says he knows this celebrity currently, which is you. Hello, David. Thanks for
Hi,
being here.
David.
So what is like you can this doesn't have to be specific to you're in the forge, but this can be like include accomplishment coaching as well, or whatever you want. But like what has the actual practice, because we're talking about it as a theory, like, oh yeah,
Mhm,
you're intense, I don't like being intense, stop being intense. That just sounds so easy.
mhm.
What's the actual practice of that felt or looked like? What's your experience been as you've worked to let that down?
Well, I could still get intense, and what I've discovered between the two,
Yeah.
the transformation that I've have felt is I don't have to throw intense out the door. You
Hmm.
know, there is a time and a place for intensity. As a matter of fact, like intensity makes me funny. You know what I mean? Because sometimes I'm
Yes.
over the top, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I love
So
that about you. You're a loony.
yeah, exactly. And I can laugh at myself. And when people laugh at it, I don't think they're laughing at me. Maybe I don't care. I can laugh at myself, and kind of own it and go, yeah, I am kind of intense, like,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And I don't always have to be that. When I catch myself being intense, um, I can just check in with myself. Like,
Yeah.
frightened? Am I frightened anywhere? What do I need? Do I need to like, can I set that down, or do I need to ask for something that I need, or create something, be responsible for what I need, take care of myself to try to, like, create a sense of safety for myself, because that's where that intensity is coming from. And a lot that's
Right.
come up in the forge. I know they talked about it at AC, but I'm starting to like really get in, because you talk about it a lot, is trusting others,
Mm.
trusting yourself, not to get it right, not that you'll know the answer, but that you can actually F it up and you can clean it up. Like,
Yes.
I have the capacity to do that,
Yes.
you know? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's such freedom in what you're describing. And like real freedom comes when we can, it's so funny and it's like cliche to the point of sounding trite in the theory of it, which is like, can I learn to love the part of myself that's intense or that's aggressive or that shuts off his heart or whatever? Because if we can start to do that, then when we get that feedback, we don't have to like retaliate. And then we can start to, instead of pushing it away, we can be like, yeah, I am being really like intense or like cold. Why might I be doing that? And is that what I want to do in this moment? And so what we get is not eliminating some part of ourselves, but rather embracing it and then being able to choose it. And that gives us more range, more power in our lives.
yeah. Yeah. And there's
Uh-huh.
some times where I can be intense and it's probably not serving me. And I can also like be okay with that. It doesn't
Yeah.
spiral me into like in shame or something about it. It's like, yeah, I'm having a day,
Uh-huh.
I am. And I'm
If
just
you are looking for someone to share 10 minutes of unbroken eye contact with no blinking, this is the day to come talk to me.
yeah, yeah. So that was one of the things that came up of at AC, that kind of like, so it started to be like pointed to over there and worked
Yeah.
with over there. And then when I came over here, I don't feel that I was as intense as I was over there, but I could still see some intensity. And I like some of my intensity.
Yes.
My gestures are big. I talk with my hands. I'm like wanting to participate all the time,
Yes.
and like, and I know for some people that they might have a sensitivity to that, because maybe that's something that they suppress in themselves.
Yeah. What I love about it is, so in like a non-transformational space, that can be problematic. So can anything, but it can be problematic because like you're such a catalyst. Like you're gonna have your hand. I can rely on you to put your hand up when you have a question. And sometimes you're in spaces where no one puts their hands up, and that's quite dry. And then other times we're in spaces where like only one person ever puts their hand up, and that that's triggering for other people. And in like an informational or educational space, the teacher doesn't really have tools to deal with that. Whereas in a transformational space, we can start to work with that and welcome it. And like the fact that someone's getting triggered because maybe on a given day you're asking a bunch of questions, they're like, I'm not getting seen. It's like, yeah, who are you being? Like, who are you being in this moment that has you not being seen? Like, why are you letting America dictate your experience? And that's such a gift that your intensity brings. You're a real fire starter.
Yeah, actually somebody did, one of the young ladies in our AC class, and David was there. Her name was Beverly, and I think I used to trigger the shit out of her. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And she came at me one time, like in class, like came at me,
Uh-huh.
like, and I was just like, well, like some of it I can own, but this was a little over the top that day. And I think that was some of her stuff. And I was totally able to see that that was her stuff. I did not get impacted at all. She just went on and on and on about how I always ask questions and da, 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 da. And it was bordering on being rude, like,
Mhm.
like, yeah. And at the end of the conversation, I just said, got it. Because I really did get it. And I was just
Yeah.
like, and I was quiet. And I think she was able to see, like, because I didn't come back at her or get all like, there was nothing here. I
Yeah.
gave her nothing. And no, I wasn't doing it intentionally. I was just like, because I really was seeing that this was her stuff. And I could see how it landed back on her, and she was able to kind of see something. I don't know what she saw, but she was able to see something because there was nothing there to hook me
Yeah.
around that intensity or the comment of the intensity. And mind you, I do ask a lot of questions.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
You're a seeker.
I
You have a
am.
lot of curiosity.
Mhm.
This is one of the things that, so there's like a lot of the zeitgeist is sort of concerned with like, we got to create safe spaces. And there's like a real importance to that because of all of the Harvey Weinstein, Me Too, like just all of that stuff.
What's a
That
zeitgeist?
zeitgeist is like the thanks for asking. My pedanticness is coming out. So the zeitgeist is like the kind of popular thought that's currently in the space, the stuff we're all talking about.
Mhm.
So, back in the 90s, Seinfeld was part of the zeitgeist.
Mhm.
In this era, trauma is part of the coaching zeitgeist, we
Mhm.
could say. So the like part of what's in the space collectively being talked about is a lot of like, we need safe spaces. And that is really important. But there's also like, we miss out on some of this stuff when we exclusively focus on that and use a rules-based approach, because then what happens is we're like, okay, no one ever say anything that might trigger anyone, and then people can't take a swing. And so everything becomes quite neutered.
Yeah, there's no muscle that's being exercised
That's right.
to deal with that stuff, which
Yeah.
will come up because not every space is monitored, or people aren't going to follow the rules all the time, whatever, if there's
That's
rules.
right. Life isn't rules bound.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
There's one of the things someone said to us once, a graduate of our work said, there's a lot of talk about creating safe spaces, but what I love here is that we create a brave space where people can step forward and take swings. So like, I know the retreat was a bit of a swing out for you. Like, can you share any about your process getting there and how it was for you?
Yeah,
And then
well,
also the impact of being there.
yeah, a couple things. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go because I found it unnecessary. I didn't want to
You'd
be
kind of
around
come
people.
into the forge like, I'm not going to do this, right? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'll do everything but that.
Yeah.
Even though it's included, I don't care. You know,
Yep.
um, COVID's going on in my mind. COVID's still going on. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of was, but it wasn't as big of a deal. I was already vaccinated like 3 times.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I'm like, and I'm not going to the jungle with a bunch of strangers. And, if it was the Four Seasons, maybe, but
Yeah. Which it
yeah,
certainly wasn't.
no, no. And then Sarah told me, she goes, you don't want to do that. She says there
Uh-huh.
were a few people that didn't, and and they felt it,
Yeah.
like you want to be there. And so she said it, and I thought, and she told me, she explained it to me. She didn't tell me what was going to go on or anything like that. She just told me, you don't want to do that. It'll be a missing for you in the
Yes. Yeah.
experience. Yeah. And so because she said that, I said, I'm going to trust. I really don't want to go. She didn't give me a compelling why to go, except that it's going to impact me.
Yeah.
And
Give you a why not, like, why
yeah,
not go? Yeah.
yeah. But I figured, she probably wouldn't be asking me. She'll probably tell me if it wasn't worth going to or whatever. Anyway, so I decided to do it. Now, number one, I was traveling by myself. I don't really like traveling by myself. I've done it before, but I don't find it to be the most enjoyable, and so, it just doesn't occur to me as a great experience, but I did it. And I got there, and we were just going to be picked up. I was going to be picked up. I didn't know who or what. I didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, from the moment I got off the plane and kind of made my way to the front where I was going to be picked up, I met two other girls that they knew each other from another program, but
Like two other participants.
yeah, Michelle and I forget her name, really
Darren?
tall, pretty one with the prettiest one, tall.
I'm not gonna fall for
Evan's
that.
wife.
Oh, Jen.
Jen, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so she was lovely, and then we waited for Michelle to come out. So Jen was just love, 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 love. And then
Yes.
Michelle, this ballsy fireball, got off the plane and
Ballsy fireball.
yeah. And then so we got these and then it was a party, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I love being around like friends, and they were so open, and so it was great. But I had packed a mosquito net, a ton of fans, a ton of repellent. I mean, over the top, like umbrellas for sun, because I don't do sun.
You were well prepared.
Oh my God. Yeah. But I mean, that's just the way I am. I just figure I don't want to burden anybody, but I don't want to suffer either. So I'll just, and I know that I'm an easy target to make fun of because I'm so over the top about things, but fuck it, I don't care. You know what I mean?
I remember leading up to like when you were in the kind of conversation with yourself about, well, am I going to go? Am I not? Like, again, a lot of the logistics were the conversation. You had a lot of logistical questions were like the big part there too.
Yeah,
and also concern about missing work.
Yeah, because I had to work, and I didn't have anybody to replace me. So I was concerned about that. And then we weren't sure if internet was going to be possible there. Because nobody guaranteed me. I was asking, and I even emailed the resort to find out like how stable is the internet connection, because if not, I'm dead. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I cannot be offline for that amount of time. And at some point I had to trust that, like internally I had to trust, which is not like me to do that. I need a guarantee, you know what I mean, in writing.
Yeah. Well, you don't have to trust when there's a guarantee in writing either, right?
Right.
No need.
Well, but the thing is about guarantee in writing, you could still fall through the cracks, and so what?
Exactly.
You have it in writing, right? But anyway, so they said hit or miss internet. If you stand there with tinfoil this way, then maybe you could get a signal, at the tip of the earth, Anyway, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go. And if I have to rent a car or pay somebody to take me into town every day for a couple of hours after or during lunch or whatever, like I didn't know how to lay out, because that's why I was trying to get details from you.
Yes.
And I couldn't get details. It was just like, you're going to have a breakthrough. You're going to have a breakthrough. I go, great, but is there internet?
Yes. And I want to speak to this like from a few places. Like the first is that what you're describing is a beautiful example of like people want breakthroughs. We all want breakthroughs. That's why we come to this work. That's what everyone, if you talk to them, are like, I want a breakthrough in whatever. And then when we're facing the precipice that we have to step over to create that breakthrough, all of the it's like all of the good reasons why not show up. It's like, well, I can't leave my job. It's impossible. And I need internet. It's impossible. Like, and it literally is impossible because from our current paradigm that we haven't yet broken through, this new thing, there's no space for this in life. So I love that you're kind of describing, like really doing a beautiful job sharing the experience of what it looks like prior to us stepping over that edge. And then the second thing I want to share is like that part of you, it's not to say logistics aren't important, but there was that part of you that was kind of scared, that was like, give me all the logistics. And then like, but what about in addition to that? And like, what are we doing on break? Like, just getting to the nth degree.
Yeah.
So that you kind of do that. And then what? You trust eventually. You're like, fuck it.
Yeah. No, but and I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you've never been, you don't know the terrain, you don't know what, and I still have responsibilities. So this is not a joke. My job is not a joke. You know what I'm saying?
And it's a big deal for you. Other people's breakthrough will be a big deal for them, and it'll look different necessarily than yours. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So for me, it really was like a thing, like somebody needs to give me some information. I'm flying blindly here, and I'm trying to be responsible, and everything's like so serious, you know what I mean? And it is serious, but anyway. So I just, I dug deep, and we had already done, I think 3 or 4 months of the Forge. And I was hearing the word trust, trust, trust. And I thought, what would it look like if if I could step into being free? Maybe I
Mm,
don't have to love it, but step into being free and trusting that number one, the net will appear metaphorically, meaning
yeah.
that I will be able to create what I need if it's not already there.
Yes.
And it was there. There was enough internet for me to work, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know if because you said, well, we're going to be doing intense work all day. We had time. I had time.
Yeah.
I had time in the morning, I had time in the evening, and I had time in the evening,
Yeah.
like I had time. I didn't know that though.
And for
And
what it's worth, I didn't either. What I didn't know was how much time you
needed.
wanted. Yeah. And I wasn't certain, who knows, right? If something happens, then we work with it. So, but anyhow,
Yeah.
back to you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I didn't know any of that. So I really had to step out and just take like just trust.
Hmm.
Um, and and I also, by that time, well, you weren't giving me much, not on purpose. You weren't trying to be annoying. You just weren't giving me much.
It's just who I am.
Yeah.
I'm just annoying.
Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so there was that trust of like, I'm going somewhere. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what it is. I have things that I need to get done. I can't get footing on whether there is things that I need. And then so I get there and I thought, well, I could deal with this. I mean, I kind of grew up in because I'm originally from Mexico in a small town that looks a lot like where we were at, like very
Yeah.
much like that. And I thought to myself, well, this is just going home.
Uh-huh.
And then, then I tried out the internet and I go, like, I got an internet here. And then I started to see, like, I got time here. I didn't have to rent a car and hire
Yeah.
somebody and all of that. Yeah. So, and the sun, I thought it was going to be more of an issue. It wasn't,
Yeah.
it really wasn't. Um, the trip that we took rafting, I managed that. I asked for what I needed. I did what I needed. And, I was a little nervous about that because sometimes people try to push you.
Me fucking too. I'd never been whitewater rafting. I was like, this sounds terrifying. Well, I assumed it was going to be like a scary, it's going to be scary. And then it's like grandmothers going down, like a
Yeah.
Disney scary, where
Yeah.
it's going to be like, all right, this is going to be fine. Anyhow.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I didn't go on that trip and I was okay with not going on that trip. I didn't feel
That's
like it was
right.
missing for me. Just because, not so much because I didn't know how to swim, because I knew there would be jackets, but I wouldn't be able to wear my hat to keep
That's
the sun
right.
off my face. And I was not interested in coming home and throwing thousands of dollars trying to get sunspots off my face. I'm not doing it, but I was okay. I did everything else. So it was
Yeah.
fine. And, so, oh, but the big one was, is there going to be drinking water? So I ordered
Right.
a bunch of like 5 gallons of water just in case, because I thought nobody else is panicking about water. And I don't know if we can drink the water. And then I was in a house with four or five other girls. We all had our beds, our individual beds, but 2 of us were sharing a room and there was another 2. And I'm just like, I need my space because, I'm special, and it was fine. They were lovely, all of them.
Yeah.
I mean, I went into a mild little depression afterwards because I missed them all. And
Totally.
it just was nothing like I thought it was going to be. I always go to the worst place of how awful it's going to be. Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, fine. And what happened after that trip is I started traveling a lot more, which I didn't internationally. And I wasn't doing that before.
Open the door a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So because of that experience, I was like, it didn't register, but I was just able to trust just a little bit more, like it would be okay. Like whatever shows up,
Yes.
I can handle it. Not necessarily, I mean, obviously being responsible and trying to plan, but not having to control every aspect of it,
It's again, like you were describing, like developing the ability to calibrate and to choose, as opposed to the automatic, like I got a plan for every last possible detail.
Right. Every scenario that could possibly come up.
Yeah, I'm going to make sure that I have like underwear packed.
Yeah.
But I don't have to worry about like whatever else.
Yeah. If I have to dump luggage, and I'll dump luggage. I have to buy luggage,
Yeah.
I'll buy luggage, like it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. It'll be fine.
Sounds like some freedom. like some real freedom got created for you.
Yeah, really, really. It just allowed me to play in a little bit bigger space,
Hmm.
and I keep using that, like, it'll be fine, just it'll be fine, it'll be fine. And maybe one day it's not fine, and that's fine. I'll survive that, and then I'll
Yes.
do something else. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that started just kind of blossoming from that experience, from the retreat.
Yes. Yeah. It's a beautiful, like what you're describing for me is such a great example of trust, where we realize from experience we can't think our way to this place. We can only go there through experience, and through the experience is scary, like you've just described so beautifully. But like through our experience, we discover like how resilient we are, and like, oh, I can actually, I don't have to do all of that crazy stuff. And then from there, we're like, holy crap, I have so much more energy. Like I don't have to cram myself full of ginseng and power smoothies, because I have all this energy freed up that I was previously devoting to managing every fucking aspect of life that possibly could show up. All that energy is freed up. Oh my God, that's so much. This is better.
Yeah. Well, and also right now what I'm seeing is that having having a little bit more freedom in that area, or more freedom, I don't want to say a little bit, it's more freedom. Um, it also helped me feel like normal and part of the group, rather than
Mm,
this person that is always like trying to figure it out before it happens. Um,
yes.
so that was also part of, I was able to relax with other people, you know,
Yeah.
and actually participate. And everybody was fascinating in that group. Like,
Yeah.
if you take the trouble to talk to them, right, and not like just like stand back, everybody had a story. Everybody was like an entire universe. And
Mm.
each person that I talked to, um, I mean, yeah, it was a great experience. I thought it was a great experience.
This is one of the gifts that transformational works brought me, because I, prior to all of this, back when I was practicing law and stuff, like I divided the world up into like, these people are dumb and boring, and then these people are smart and interesting. And this world was getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and the dumb and boring people were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And because that was the way I was looking at the world, of course I would receive everything and filter people and blah 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 blah. And what I've discovered as I've opened up and done my work is, like, to your point, people, everyone's fascinating. Even like someone who is arguably being boring, that can be fascinating, because it's like, huh, how did this come about? What's going on that had no baby comes out of the womb and is just like boring. I'm going to
Mhm.
smoke a pipe and read a newspaper. That's not how babies come out of the womb. So like somewhere along the way that got created, and it's like, boy, it makes life way more interesting, and it makes social situations way less tedious, because I'm not, to your point, guarding against getting stuck with a boring person, or guarding against like, or strategizing to find the three people that are okay and meet Adam's crazy bar of interestingness.
Yeah,
Blech.
yeah. Something that really stands out about this year, also part AC, but this year as well,
Yeah, yeah.
is I have a big part or piece of myself that likes to caretake, like
Aha.
over responsibility. And I was always concerned about doing all this work with coaching, because that means I actually have to talk to people and facilitate and and all that. And that wanting to go in and save people, rescue them, I mean, this all this work has really all this work like I've been able to like I've been able to through this work, first of all, trust myself
Yeah.
and get a lot of distinction around the impulses and the urges of wanting to give somebody the answer or make them feel better when they're experiencing some sadness or anger or whatever. I'm like, and that was always something that I struggled with,
Hmm.
because I would go in and try to manage their feelings or moods or whatever, really, because I was uncomfortable with my feelings and
Yes.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
about them. I just hadn't distinguished all that. And this year and the year before really gave me like a long like runway to practice and to look at that piece.
Yeah.
And because sometimes it's inappropriate, you know what I mean? Just common
Yeah.
sense inappropriate, but because I can't be with somebody else's discomfort in the past. So and it's not perfect, but like there's a lot more dignity now around that for me. You know,
That's
because
a
I would
beautiful
stick my
word for
foot
it.
in my mouth before and then feel bad about it afterwards. And I go, God damn it, I did it again. You know,
Uh-huh.
unsolicited advice. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, just
From
uh
such a kind place. But to your point, it like, because you had such a need to like have everything handled and like put together, of course, then you're going to try to protect other people from not being, it's just a natural offshoot. What we strive to create for ourselves, we're automatically going to push towards other people. And so
yeah.
as you've become more like able to just be, don't have to plan for stuff, then you have more space for other people to just be. And because you've walked through your own discomfort and discovered the fruit on the other side, you can kind of stand with people and let them be in their discomfort, knowing there's something beautiful that comes out of this.
Yes, and
Yeah.
sometimes, not always, but sometimes it is that, I like standing back and allowing them to have their experience
Yeah.
will open up something for them rather than me going in and interfering. But the other thing too is a lot of times I found out I by sitting still is they're not having the experience that I think they're having.
Hmm.
I just see the world that way, but
Yes.
they're having a completely different experience. So my trying to go in there and fix it or rescue them, like that's from something going on over here. So
Yes.
yeah, now again, it's not perfect right now. It's not perfect, but it is so much better. It feels so much better for me than it used to be because before it was just a compulsion. Like I would just like the doctor hits your knee and the leg goes up. That's
Yes.
the way
Yeah.
it was for me. So, and I'm still working on it. I'm deepening it, kind of like yoga. I just go deeper and deeper with it, you know? But I
Yeah.
mean, I have some distinction around it. I just before, I mean, it had me. I couldn't even like,
A
you
great
know,
landmark distinction there. It had
yeah,
you rather than
yeah,
you having it. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It reminds me when this has shifted a fair bit in our relationship, but like whenever we drive, I'm usually the one that drives, and then we'll get downtown to do whatever we're going to do, and we'll be looking for parking. And I'm very comfortable being patient and just driving around and finding a spot. And Bay would like, there's a spot there, that person's backing up, you could wait here. So she's, I think, well, she's trying to be helpful, but I don't want that. I'm content. I feel good about what I'm doing as far as parking is concerned. And she would say stuff sometimes like, wow, you really don't like receiving help. And it would like rankle me. The first reason it would rankle me is because she's right. I don't like I created myself as a man who doesn't need anyone's help. Fuck off. I got this. So there is that part. But the thing that I've been really present to lately, as I've learned to stop stepping on other people's process, is actually just let me have my process. That's what I want in this moment. And I didn't have the words to distinguish it that way. I didn't have the way to ask that, but it's like, I just want you to I want you to surrender to me parking and just let me park the car. I'm fine. If I need help here, I'm reliable to ask for it, but I'm good. And it's funny because no one could have told me to say those words. I had to discover it myself through this work to then learn how to park with my wife in the car. I mean, it's ridiculous,
Mhm.
but like, this is how we gain all of this wisdom, is through the experience of it, the sitting in it. And then we start to realize we can look back and be like, oh, that's what's going on. And then we can change the way things go for us in the future. It's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, so the way it's happening in these little interactions in the coaching calls, but
Yeah.
then it's out here in the world and it's big, like it's like bigger and bigger stuff that I'm able to apply this stuff to
Yes.
because of like an experience that you just described, like a simple parking thing, right? But it opens up like a whole thing, you know?
Yes. Yeah. We
Yeah.
change our lives here and we
Yes.
change our lives everywhere because we're
Yes.
changing who we're being rather than what we're
Yes.
doing in our circumstances.
Yes.
We need to start to wind down. So you've done all of this work, you have a wealth of training and stuff. Are you coaching? Do you work with clients, or are you entirely
No,
working a full-time job and that's what you do?
that's what I do. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, I work with people, so I use this stuff all the time and out in the world. For me, everything that I've learned, you know, no, I don't coach. But like I use it. I use it all the time.
Mhm.
just in day-to-day life. I mean, like when you were talking about earlier about relationships with I forget what it was. I didn't want to interrupt you because I didn't want to lose but early on in the call,
Yeah.
we were talking about something, and I thought, oh my God, you could totally use that in relationships, like romantic relationships.
Yes.
And I forget what it was, but so all of this stuff is just like you take it here and then you use it there. It's
Yes.
people are people.
My belief about what I've come to conclude about coaching, and people don't always love this at first when I share it when they're interested in this career, but is that like to be a masterful coach, we have to like really learn this stuff and apply it in our life. And like kind of on the tail end of that, if we want, we can support other people to do it. But always, first and foremost, we're putting it into practice in our own life. And really, the doing it as a career is optional, which is what you're modeling. Like you do support people. It's just not where you're drawn. You're drawn to do what you do, and then like maybe that comes about, maybe it doesn't, but you're here for the work to benefit you in your life.
Yeah. Well, I want
Uh-huh.
to say one last thing, and I'll make it quick about
Please,
this.
I don't believe it, but let's find
Well,
out.
yeah, I know you didn't fall for that. Okay, well, you just, pull me back. So one thing that I'm noticing, well, no, I mean, yeah, like, and it's again, it's kind of like a rose that's opening up, because
Yes.
it's there is a boldness that's coming out in me, but it's not a boldness as in like up in your face boldness, a boldness internally of somehow there's a clarity of what I want and what I don't
Mhm.
want, or what I don't want to say willing to accept, I know, because that still sounds too up in your face. It's a very subtle, like
Yes.
this. I think this is what it is. Saying what I see, saying what's so, having because now it's not that in the past I haven't, like, I'm very intuitive. I pick up on nuances, and that, I mean, I can only speculate where that comes from. I think as a child, I had to walk on eggshells. And so
Yeah.
reading people became like a lot of kids, an art form, right? And
Yes.
so I was able to bring that into, but I was able to bring that into my adult years, but I don't always trust myself to, or it doesn't even occur to me to say what is obvious.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like saying what's so, saying what I see, not from a like a you, but kind of like, hey, did you notice? And they're like, oh yeah, I did, and kind of that's coming out. Did that make sense, Adam, what I just said?
Totally. Yeah. And the thing I want to reflect is like you're you're no longer holding back what you see. You're trusting your intuition, but you're
Yeah.
also commensurate to what you were saying earlier, you're also not attached to being right about it. You're kind of like more engaged in a dynamic relationship. Here's what I see, and then letting people kind of, yeah, well, this resonates, but not so much that. Like, so there's like simultaneously what's really cool, and what I've noticed you've created is like a boldness, but there's like an incredible softness you're bringing with that boldness. Whereas before it seemed like they were kind of separate. You were either bold and intense or soft and nice, but then we
Yeah.
missed out on the power that you bring to the
Yeah.
table.
So there's more of an integration of just relaxing into myself.
Yeah.
And yeah. So that, and I've noticed that a lot more, and it's being reflected back to me, like stuff like I love the way you communicate, or things like that. And I'm
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I noticed, I think I noticed what they're talking about, and that's starting to unfold um
Hmm.
as a result, so
Yeah.
that's those are huge shifts for me internally, even though they may appear subtle, because they make um the experience internally in here is like I feel like I'm coming into my own, as
Yeah.
like a person,
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
So if people want to like follow your work or just see what you're up to, is there any way they can do that, or are they shit out of luck?
You're shit out of luck. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm on Facebook. Anybody can find me.
Yeah, so that's the place to just connect with you and to, yeah, yeah. And if people really want to work with America because of all the work she's done, and you hear yourself in her story, just pester her, just poke her and prod her, and you'll be able to wear her down
That's
eventually.
right. That's right.
America, I just acknowledge the like exactly what you've just been distinguishing. Like there's a strength and a boldness to you that's always been there, but there's such a softness to like to even your face, you know, like visually you occur different. And what's beautiful is like it's hard to look at the sun through a telescope. And it's like you've removed that telescope. You're no less powerful, but now we can be with you in all of your glory and all of your power, all of your strength, all of your radiance. So thanks for doing that work. It's really, really tremendous. And it's really you sharing that like you have come to a place of loving your intensity and your boldness, because it kind of makes you funny too. That's such a gift to people. And I'm so like delighted about the idea that more people, just by virtue of being around you, get to discover that for themselves, because they're like, huh, if that wackadoodle over there can look that good and be that beautiful and be that intense and laugh at herself about it, maybe it's okay that I'm a bit intense too. So thanks for all the work that you've done over these past few years. It's amazing and it's such an honor to behold.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any parting thoughts for anyone? Anything you want to share before we wind down?
No, I'm curious, how many viewers?
Very few probably at this point. We've got 2 left.
And then there are 2.
Yeah, totally. When we do these long form podcasts, people, I think most people listen after the fact on the podcast. So usually when we get, once we put it up, because it's better suited to that anyhow, right? People don't want to sit in front of their lap. You got to be loonies like us to sit in front of a laptop and watch for as long as we do. I know, you're amazing. You're amazing. She does it, guys. So y'all should too. If you could write more people and tell them that.
Do it.
Mike, I'll share a story before we finish. One of my clients, who's this beautiful, hilarious human being, was sharing, he was listening to my podcast and he was like, man, you really created something for me, because you had 0 people on your live and you were just generating and having fun, and then you were sharing how you were like sad about the fact that you had 0 people, and I was just like blown away that that was possible, and I was like, oh, thanks, Leo. That really touched my heart. And then just because the universe has a sense of humor, sure enough, next week, 0 viewers. I'm like, fuck, I already got the message. You don't need to really test me on this. Anyhow, okay. Follow along with America. She's just up to all kinds of awesome stuff. So connect with her on Facebook. She's an amazing human being. I highly recommend just being in relationship with her. We have 17 people registered for the Forge currently, which is crazy. And our upper limit will absolutely be 30, possibly less. So if this kind of conversation sounds intriguing to you, or it's something that you're interested in, reach out, have a conversation with me, so that we can support you with that. When do you go to Costa Rica, America?
Tonight.
Awesome. Me as well. So we're going to now head off to, I guess it's the rainy season there. I think we were looking at the weather. We're like, brother. All right. But good for you. Not as much sun.
Yeah, I know. But it comes and goes.
I know. Yeah. And it thunders down and then it's done.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyhow, everyone, I hope you have an amazing week, an incredible weekend. Thanks for tuning in, and we love you, and bye-bye. Have a good weekend. End this live stream.